Let me bring in our hypnotist, Marshall Silver.
It's Marshall Silver, ladies and gentlemen, the world's fastest hypnotist.
And welcome to today's show of Marshall Silver Live. So excited to have you with me. Lots and lots going on. If you haven't figured it out yet, I know it's hard to believe, yet every single day I give away cash to every single person who calls me on this show and asks me a question. All you got to do is dial 1-877-SILVER1. You'll get a chance to talk to our screener if you're interesting, if you're literate, if you can speak clearly. You're probably going to get on the air. You're probably going to get, not probably, if you get on the air, you're guaranteed to get $100. And if you referred somebody to get on the show, you get 20, they get 100, everybody wins. Nice dinner, nice lunch on me, Marshall Silver. Hey, lots going on. We got a great guest today, so make sure you stick around. We're going to talk about crypto and cash. Which is the better thing to be in right now? What are the downfalls of both? And all things related to investing. I'm very excited about our guest today. Per the usual course, before I bring our guest on the air, I want to chat a little bit about topics happening, exciting times we're living in. I mean, truly exciting times we're living in. It's not fun to find out that things are messed up. I don't just mean in our country. Certainly I do mean in our country in this conversation, but I mean in anything. It's not fun to find out that your marriage isn't what you thought it was. It's not fun to find out that your finances aren't what you thought they were. It's not fun to find out your health is challenged. None of that's fun. But the fact is, if you don't know that you've got health challenges, you can't solve them. If you don't know that your marriage is about to end in divorce, you can't save it. If you don't know that you're broke, you don't know what the score is, you can't make money because you think you already have and you don't think you need to do the work necessary. This is what's going on in our country right now. In our country, we have come to the conclusion that obviously things are messed up. And I think any patriot, any American, any person with any amount of sense whatsoever has known that our country was messed up. The challenge is, I don't think anybody could fathom how messed up it was. That's where we are right now. That's what happened in 2016 when Hillary Clinton thought she was going to win by a landslide, and then she didn't. That's where we are in this timeline of world history. We're in the place of find out. We're in the place where all the corruption and all the fraud and all the deception and all the reality that our political leaders, for the most part, the majority of them, 95% at least, don't give a damn about you. They don't care about us. Why? Because they care about themselves. And so we're at a place where all of these things are being revealed. Sometimes people ask, why is there so much turmoil when Trump's in office? He's an outsider. The political mainstream hates him because he's an outsider exposing their racket, their criminal enterprise, their crime family tactics. That's what's going on right now. So it's an exciting time to be in this time as long as you can handle the heat. And in due respect, most people can't handle the heat. And there's a term. It's called cognitive dissonance. What is cognitive dissonance? It's my inability to see reality because I want my reality to be different than what it actually is. And then therefore, I just go into denial. It's the husband that won't ask his wife, how are we doing? It's the person that won't step on the scale because they know they're fat and they just don't want to know how fat they are. It's the person that refuses to acknowledge the idea that 82% on average across the board, whites, Hispanics, blacks, Asians, everyone, 82% of the U.S. population wants voter ID. Why? Because we all want honest elections. And if you don't want an honest election, number one, you're not American. Number two, you're a cheater. Number three, you're what's wrong with this country. Anybody that doesn't want voter ID for people to vote, there's only one reason. There's no other motive other than they want to cheat. They want people that don't have IDs cheating and voting when they're not supposed to. That's all. I saw a post, somebody was talking about voter ID and the idea that 82% of the population wants voter ID. And the person said, well, it's not really fair. You know, the IDs might cost $10. Okay, if you don't have $10, you shouldn't be voting. Your judgment's already really screwed up. You're a moron. We don't want you voting. So yes, if the $10 blockage is the thing stopping you from actually getting an ID, which every adult has to have, if that's what stops somebody from getting an ID so that they can vote, yes, they should not be voting regardless of their status. But that's not what's going on. That's just a stupid excuse. And, you know, you hear me use words like moron and stupid, and I get it. Some people are offended by that. And I apologize if I offend anybody. From the depths of my heart, I just want to say, who freaking cares? You're offended by anything, and you're going to be offended by nothing, too. So it doesn't really matter to me. What matters to me is that we get back to a time in this country and in this life, in this world, where, yes, the truth shall set us free. That's where we've got to be. Hey, today's show I'm really excited about. Normally, you hear me rant on for a little bit longer than I'm ranting on today. Today, I'm not going to because we've got a very special guest. I wish he was in the studio. The reason he's not in the studio is this gentleman is one of the top traders in the world. He is he's an instructor. He teaches people how to trade. He teaches people how to make money. He's an instructor for what used to be the Online Trading Academy, now called Trading Academy. For those of you out there that are Christians, maybe you've heard of Life Surge. I know my wife and my sister just returned from an awesome conference that Life Surge did here in San Diego. And he's also one of the instructors for Life Surge. He has a daily show on YouTube, a live show on YouTube after the market closes, discussing what happened in the market that day and so much more. He's a genius. Beyond all that, he's a good guy that I've known for a number of years. It is my great honor to welcome to our show Marcus Rothfeld. Welcome, Marcus. Or it should be Merlin. Merlin. Here's what's funny. And Merlin, please forgive me. Good to see you. I have a friend, his name is Marcus Rothkranz, and he too is a genius. And I had my team put your name up on the monitor right in front of me because prior to introducing you, I kept in my brain confusing the names, and then I went and did it. But isn't that the case? Isn't that what happens when people are trading too? Is that sometimes they get stuck on a thought and it's not based in reality, and they start making decisions based on the illusion of what's going on in their brain and not the math that's actually presented to them? Welcome to the show. You just need to unmute yourself.
I wasn't sure whether I unmuted on my end or you unmuted on your end. Nice to see you, Marshall.
Yeah, you're all good, brother. Hey, good to see you. So before we dive in, where are you right now? Are you up in Orange County?
I'm in Orange County. Yep, SoCal. Loving it.
Awesome.
You know, I'm dealing with these really, I guess, tragic weather events that are happening here. It's going to be 85 degrees today, and I just don't know if I have the air conditioning bill to solve my problems. You know, because
and do you have someone to shovel all that sunshine out of your driveway?
It's tough. It's tough to shovel it out. Yeah, I'm working. We pay to be here, right? We pay to be here, so I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Yes, we pay dearly to be in California. We do, but it on a level is certainly worth it to me. And you know, that's the whole idea, is that money cures most things. You can live wherever you want. You just have to make enough money to do so.
Absolutely.
So that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about making money. First of all, welcome to the show. One of the things that, you know, people ask a lot, and today's topic obviously is cryptocurrency or U.S. dollars, cash or crypto. And a lot of times people ask the question, is crypto better than cash? So let's just start with an overview, 40,000-foot observation of the distinctions between cash and crypto, the pros and the cons of both.
I mean, we only have 2 hours, right? There's a much lengthier discussion there. You know, let's start with what we're used to, which is fiat currency. So we could talk about the U.S. dollar, which I'm sure most of your audience is using. We'll go to just the efficiencies and inefficiencies of the dollar. Obviously, you know, we all have fiat currency in our pocket. This is legal tender guaranteed by the U.S. government. I can go to any business, any store, and pay with dollars. The problem is that there is no fixed supply of this dollar. You've got quite a pile in front of you. You could have hundreds of trillions of dollars printed at a moment's notice by the Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve. And when you increase supply that much, that rapidly, it creates a whole swath of systemic effects, which, of course, we've witnessed here over the past couple of years with inflation getting up near 10%. So I'm not sure if I can share my screen with you. If you want me to share it just so your viewers can see this one, if you guys would like.
Do you have the ability to share his screen?
Let me see it real quick. There you go. If it's there, you can share it. If not, don't worry about it. The chart I'm showing you here, yeah, perfect. This is M1 money supply to give your viewers an idea. Back in 1960, there was only $1 billion worth of money in the entire system, right? $1 billion worth of cash in all the world in savings investment accounts. You look what's gone from 1960 all the way to 2020, we went up to 4 trillion. So we increased 4 times over the period of 60 years. And then COVID hit. And in a period of under 2 months, we went from 4 trillion to $16 trillion. They increased money supply by $12 trillion. And then we peaked all the way up to 21 trillion. So the point I'm making here is that dilution, that ability to manipulate the US dollar is a detriment to many people. They don't see that. They don't understand that this type of manipulation is going on by our government. As that happens, the value of your dollar, the purchasing power of all that money that you've earned is going down. Since 1913, the dollar's lost 97% of its purchasing power. That means 93% of your buying power has disappeared because of inflation and other practices. So while we love fiat currency,
that with the idea that since 1913, when the IRS was instigated, that we're also losing that portion of our money as well.
Sure. Combine that with the Federal Reserve, and really when the Federal Reserve was created was the big point, because now they manipulate the money supply, right? And I'm in that camp of abolish the Fed. You know, it's kind of a double-edged sword, Marshall. Do you love all the things that America provides, which is lots of services and parks and all these different things that you and I enjoy? That's coming from printed money, right? That's coming from artificial money. So I can complain about the inflation of or deflation of the US dollar's value since 1913, but the reality is I'm getting a lot of services for that. If we remove the Fed and their ability to manipulate the dollar, a lot of stuff's going to go away, and we won't have that the luxuries that we do have in the United States. So I'm number one. I'm kind of against fiat currency because of the ability for a government and any central bank to manipulate their money supply, which ultimately ends up hurting the people in the long run.
But hold on. I just want to step under that thought, because I also, of course, am of the mindset of end the Fed. And my question is, prior, obviously, to 1913, we had no federal income tax. The country was fairly new, so I'm not even sure we had, city parks or state parks or anything, national parks. But I also believe that part of the challenge is not that there's federal tax. It's not that there is a Fed controlling the monetary system inside of the United States. The IRS and the Federal Reserve are a byproduct of each other. That without the Federal Reserve, we don't have an IRS. We don't need it. They were formed at the same time. One was designed to fund the other one. But without the Federal Reserve manipulating currency, aren't we in a substantially better place? Because now, instantly, we're not borrowing money from some third-party entity that's not a part of the government, and then the consumer, the citizen, the taxpayer, paying interest on top of that money that was loaned to us by the Federal Reserve. Wouldn't we be in a better place if we didn't have to deal with repaying the Federal Reserve for money that they created out of thin air?
That's a tricky question, because we don't necessarily borrow money from the Federal Reserve. I mean, I guess you technically can say you can. So what happens ultimately is that Federal Reserve, when they go to their Operation Twist and quantitative easing 1, 2, and 3, is they're buying treasuries and long-term, different maturity bonds from the government. So technically they're loaning the government.
So hold on to that thought, though. Aren't bonds and maturities loans from the Federal Reserve?
Yep.
So calling them bonds or securities is a nice way of softening the fact that the Federal Reserve pulled money out of thin air, handed it to the Treasury. Now the Treasury, which is a part of the U.S. government, owes that money back to the Federal Reserve, yet the U.S. Treasury has no mechanism to make money other than fees, fines, and taxes.
Right. And that's why you see the system escalating, right? Our deficit and our the amount of debt we owe as a country is rising significantly, because if the Federal Reserve had not been buying these bonds, whatever denomination and duration they are, our yields would be much higher, right? When you create a buyer for bonds, yields drop. If we didn't have those buyers, our yields for, let's say, the 10-year would no longer be sitting at 4%. It'd be like at 8%, which means your 30-year fixed rate mortgage would be running about 11 or 12%. So yeah, it does help fuel the economy to have this fictitious government entity, the Federal Reserve, which is not even a government entity, just run by banks, feeding the government money that they made out of thin air. So ultimately,
so let me ask you a question. And again, forgive me for interrupting you, but I'm so glad to have you here, because it's refreshing to talk to somebody that at least is intelligent about the entire, monetary system. And it's so rare that people actually get it. You can ask 10 citizens, what does the Fed do? What is their role with the Treasury, and what's their impact on the economy? 9 out of 10 don't really know. They if you said the Federal Reserve is neither, they wouldn't know what you were talking about. And it's scary to me that so many people that live in this country and live in the world of central banks don't realize what they are. without the Federal Reserve, we would still have a monetary policy, but the monetary policy would be controlled by the U.S. government, which is one step removed from having to deal with the Federal Reserve. The challenge, with my opinion, with the Federal Reserve is not just the fact that that money must be paid back, because that's the agreement between the Federal Reserve and the Treasury, but it's the interest payments on top of that. I don't know about you, Merlin. I wish that I could loan you $1 million that I didn't have, and that you'd have to pay me back the $1 million plus interest when I didn't have anything to start with.
The good news there is when you loan me that $1 million and I have to pay you interest, the good news is by you buying in such quantity these bonds and loaning me that money, I can now offer you a lower rate. So it's a win for me if I'm the government, because I would normally be paying, let's say 8%, but because you're buying in such volume as the Fed, I'm now going to be paying you 4%. So this is huge for me. I love it. It's basically like a drug dealer getting high off their own supply, really. I mean, it's a terrible
So let me
system.
ask you a more basic question then, because you are an investor. Your
Trader,
wisdom comes from knowing how to play inside the existing system, right?
100%.
I am one step removed from you. Yeah, I have minor investments and things, but not like you. You make a living investing in things, understanding the flow of money. But isn't it true that if we didn't have the Federal Reserve, if it ended today, that we would still have a monetary system? We wouldn't have any bonds because the Treasury Department wouldn't have to borrow any money. What would the Treasury Department would do what the feds are doing today? They'd simply hit a keystroke on their keyboard and say, oh, look, we just found another $1 trillion. Because the Fed didn't find $1 trillion. They're loaning money that's not real.
True.
So the question I have for you is, let me back up a second here. What are your thoughts on auditing the Fed?
100%. Do it. I think it'll be pretty scary. It's like the Wizard of Oz. You peel back the curtain, I think a lot of people are going to go, oh, shit. Really?
Yes.
That's what's going on there? I mean, no audit ever for the Fed. And you're managing trillions of dollars worth of money and buying bonds and all these different. Yeah. You know, I'm not worried about, did Jerome Powell spend a little bit too much money to build a building, even though he went through all the compliance steps to do it. Yeah, let's sue him for that one. There's a way bigger issue here facing the U.S. people versus that building being built and what actually is going on behind the scenes at the Fed.
Yeah, but isn't the building being built endemic of exactly what's going on? They're wasting U.S. dollars on something that really has no point in using our tax dollars for. It's everything that's going on in the country right now with money being, put in markets and places. I don't care about sex change operations in Uganda. I don't care about, dancing transvestites in South Africa. I really don't care. I don't even care, in due respect, about paying for people here in the United States that aren't supposed to be here legally. I care about my family. I care about you. I care about your family because we have to. You got to take care of your own house first.
Yep.
So back to the audit of the Fed. What do you suppose is the reason there's been no disclosure? And I realize this is not what we intended to talk about today, but you're a fascinating guy with lots of insights. What do you suppose is the reason we've never had a disclosure of actual ownership of the Fed, nor has the Fed ever been audited in the last 113 years?
Why haven't we gotten the unredacted Epstein files? There's just too much damage in those things that I think would point fingers at entities, at individuals that could be systemically damaging. So you don't want people to know what really
metaphor,
going on.
though, isn't it? That's a bad analogy. The Epstein files might not be released because they're protecting victims. There's no victims at the Fed. There's just criminals.
True, but
the victims are us.
In the Epstein files, you're also finding out the criminals.
Yes.
So there's criminals and victims. Yes. And here I would say that when you peel back what the curtain goes on the Fed, it's about finding out mainly criminals, right? The victims would ultimately, I think, be the American people.
100%. So there's zero reason, and we're finding out since you brought it up with the Epstein files. They're making big claims of who's in the Epstein files and how many times they're in the Epstein files, and they're extremely misrepresenting things. Trump's in the Epstein files 5,000 times. Yeah, the news reports of the election of 2020 are in the Epstein files. That doesn't mean Trump was in the Epstein files talking about pedophilia. But again, the Fed, I don't think that's a good analogy, because the Fed is an outside entity that writes policy for all of us financially that absolutely has to be held to account. And there's zero reason. I get the politics of it. I get the fact that wealthy people have an agenda that they don't want exposed, and that's why we can't get the audit of the Fed, and there's no disclosure as to who owns the Fed. The general public, I guarantee you, 90% of the general public thinks the Federal Reserve is a government entity, don't understand why Trump is attacking this outside entity that's been profiting off the U.S. taxpayer since 1913. So I'd like to move on because you're here, and I could talk about this. I could talk about this forever with you. Tell me the distinction, obviously, between cryptocurrency and the U.S. dollar or any fiat currency, which all world currencies at this point are fiat currencies. In my opinion, the biggest distinction is that a fiat currency I can hold in my hands. As bad as it is, I can still hold it in my hands. I can hide it underneath my bed, and as long as it maintains some value, I have some value in my hands. A few years ago, I went to buy something from my PayPal account, and when I went to the account to buy some $200 item, the account that was supposed to have over $20,000 in it didn't have any. And when I contacted PayPal and I said, "What's the deal?" they said, "You violated our terms and conditions." I asked, "Which ones?" They said, "We can't tell you. You're under review." Wow. I said, "You stole my $20,000. Why can't you tell me what I violated?" They said, "You'll be under review. We can tell you in 6 months." So I set an alarm, and 6 months later contacted them and said, "What's going on? I need my money." They said, "Yep, you violated our terms and conditions, and the fine is the amount that was in your account." Well, I go to do some research, and I come to find out that hundreds of thousands of people have had a similar experience with PayPal. It's in their terms and conditions. They can just seize your account for no reason. So that's why I don't use PayPal anymore. That's my fear of digital currencies. My fear of digital currencies is people will talk about the idea that it's on the blockchain, it's safe from government, government authority, and that unlike the U.S. dollar, which is completely under the government authority, my belief is that a digital currency is more dangerous than a fiat currency. And obviously, a fiat currency is way more dangerous than, say, a precious metal or some kind of physical asset. Can I get your input on that?
A lot to unpack there. So there's danger, like anything, there's pros and cons to it. Since you started with the dangers of it, let's start with the dangers of it. And I think you have to understand the architecture of what is a digital currency. So this is a huge spectrum of investment possibilities. For example, you could start things off with Bitcoin, right? That's one that most people know the name of. It's a distributed ledger technology. No one entity controls it. And to your point, could the government go and freeze your Bitcoin account? The answer is no, they cannot. Because there is no group of people that would say, yes, let's freeze that account. That's because it's decentralized.
Got it. I just want to interject while you're talking about this. They cannot seize the Bitcoin, but just like the poker sites that used to operate offshore and operate here in the United States, they can make it illegal. And that's what my prediction is that the governments at a point will outlaw physical or fiat currency. They will instigate a purely digital financial platform. But the challenge is they then can, and they could do it now, they could outlaw the use of any other digital currencies inside of a geo like the United States and say, yeah, we can't seize your Bitcoin, but you can't use it here either.
Correct. And that is definitely plausible, where they could say they would not be able to freeze my Bitcoin account, but they could go to Coinbase and Kraken and Gemini and Binance.us and say, hey, you big US exchanges, if you do any business with Bitcoin, we will shut you down. We'll close your business. And they're going to go, okay, just like they did with the Canadian truckers a few years back in Canada, right? So that's possible, but there will still be an outlet somewhere for you to cash out of that Bitcoin in that point. The new laws that went into effect in June of last year, which was the Genius Act, and do you know the Genius Act and all the details there?
I don't.
So the Genius Act basically is, I hate to say it, I sound like a bitter cynic, but I think most of our politicians are worthless pieces of garbage that are self-interested in just doing what's best for them, and I can't stand them. However,
I think you're actually voicing the popular opinion right now. I think that's the majority of us.
I'd love to see revolt at some point in time where this self-interested greed on the part of Capitol Hill just goes away. It's like, right for my freaking country. You know, you should do what's right for the people. You were voted in for that. But anyway, get me off my soapbox. The Genius Act is actually
you're in the right place for that soapbox.
I stood back when I saw the final review and I was like, wow, this is a brilliant idea. I can't say I'm using this word, but a brilliant idea by the U.S. government. And here's why. The Genius Act says that any entity can create a stable coin. For your viewers out there, a stable coin is usually a token It's a digital token that's pegged or locked to the value of another asset, like the US dollar, like gold, like the yen, the British pound, whatever. However, any company can create one in the United States, which I think has a lot of people going, oh no, that's crazy. There's going to be too much of it around. These will be regulated by the government. And if it's under, I believe, a $10 billion stablecoin, it's regulated by the state. Above 10 billion, it'll be regulated by the Fed, federal government, not Fed, federal government. When a dollar comes in, so if you buy a stablecoin, let's say that Wells Fargo issues a stablecoin, which they will. All banks will have a stablecoin because it's going to include you in their financial system loop. So if I take a dollar and I buy $1 worth of stablecoin from Wells Fargo, they will be required by this new bill called the Genius Act to take that dollar and split it into three pieces. One piece stays in US dollars as cash, and it has to be deposited in a regulated US bank. So, genius point number one, you're forcing people to buy dollars. Meaning, if someone from China wants to buy a US stablecoin to interact with the US market, they take their yuan, they have to buy dollars with that. That helps solidify the US dollar as reserve currency. It creates buyers for dollars. That's good. Number two, they have to do on that split. So there's 1/3. The second third is they have to buy US short-term treasuries. So they're creating a buyer of government bonds, 93-day maturity or less. So these are very short term, so they're low risk. But right now you're looking at over 4% for the 1 month T-bill. If you create a bunch of buyers for that, it pushes that yield down. And all of a sudden, Treasury can now issue money at, let's say, 2% or 2.5%, saving themselves billions of dollars in interest payments. And it creates buyers for government bonds. The third piece is they have to participate in the repo market with the Federal Reserve. So part of that cash sits at the Federal Reserve and provides liquidity to our financial system, which honestly, we could talk about that too, as a house of cards. But now you have those three investments propping up the US. You're buying government bonds, you're putting cash back into the system, and you're using it to back up the system. Genius. And that's going to be implemented by August of this year.
When the Genius Act is implemented, what impact will that have on people that don't have any cryptocurrency in their portfolios?
So one of the big things that I've been talking with all my students about is when you look at the crypto market, the reason it's floundering, the reason it's struggling is it doesn't have adoption, does not have clarity as far as what's a security, what's not a security, what's legal. Microsoft had a vote. So did Amazon. Amazon wanted to add 2% of their total cash, which is $100 billion, into Bitcoin. So $2 billion of Bitcoin. I think Microsoft wanted to do 5%. They both voted it down. It's not because they don't like Bitcoin. It's because there's no clarity on it. For example, if I take Microsoft and Microsoft puts 5% of their $100 billion, so $5 billion, into Bitcoin, there is the potential for shareholders to get together and say, we'll do a class action lawsuit against Microsoft for putting our money in unsafe, unpredicted, unregulated investments. So right now, all businesses except Tesla, right, and MicroStrategy are like, we're not touching this for now. When we get that clarity and understanding of what's a security, what's not, what I can do with my investments, I think you'll see more institutional adoption. So I think the big piece here is we don't have adoption yet. And people are still afraid of crypto, understandably. You see what's going on today, market meltdown. I think we're going significantly lower in Bitcoin over the next few months. However, long term, you talk
because
decade,
you said
20,
it. Because you said it and you're the guy, where do you think it's going over the next few months? What's going to be the dip? How far?
It really sucks to say it because I'm a holder of Bitcoin and I will hold no matter what. But targeting wise, if you use the 4-year cycle, so there's this very predictable 4-year cycle that's happened every time since inception in 2009. The first year is an aggressive sell-off and it falls about 70%. Based off the highs we had just a couple months ago in October, that would target right around $37,000 to $38,000 for Bitcoin. I don't think we're going there personally. I think this time is different. We have a president who is overtly positive on crypto. Why? Right. Because it's self-interested, right? He owns World Liberty Financial, DJT. His son is the CEO of American Bitcoin Trust or American Bitcoin, I don't know, American Bitcoin something. All of his kids own crypto and so does he. So at a certain point, I think if Bitcoin gets below, let's say 65,000, I think you're going to see President Trump say something wild like, it's going to be huge. We're going to do something for America today. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. It's going to be huge. We're going to start a strategic Bitcoin reserve where we have the treasury, issue money, and we're going to buy Bitcoin. It's going to be huge. We're going to be, no one's doing it. I know more about Bitcoin than anybody else. That's what he's going to do. By
the way, that impression alone gets you back on my show again very soon. Thank you.
Thanks. I was going to do a Joe Biden one for you, but it's hard to stare at the camera that long and not say anything. So
yeah, that now you're on twice.
Woohoo! Winning. It's just, I think that President Trump is so self-interested in greed when making himself money that, and again, I'm not an anti-Trump, pro-Trump guy. I'm an American trying to capitalize on whatever financial opportunities present themselves, regardless of who's at the helm. Whether I love them or hate them is irrelevant to me. I just have to do what I can because my voice, all I can do is vote. I can do my part and help making change by my voice. But other than that, it doesn't do me any good to get all upset about it. I mean, some people are so upset about him and some people love him to death, whatever, I'm just going to try to ride his coattails for policies. And I think that he's going to be much more pro crypto. Plus you've got Scott Bessent, Secretary of the Treasury, very pro crypto and owns crypto. You've got the chairman of the SEC chairman, right? He is also very pro crypto. And he has said within the next couple of years, everything will be digital. If that's not a precursor or a warning sign to everybody to get involved in digital in some way, I don't know what is. You have Larry Fink, which says everything's going to be tokenized. Every financial instrument in America will be tokenized. He's the leader of the largest financial firm in the world. Like, shouldn't we be listening to this stuff? And I think you have to tread with caution because there's so many pieces to it that are dangerous. But overall, if you build a portfolio, if you're strategic about it and you really understand the asset class, I think there's a ton of opportunity. But yeah, I think we're going down until October of this year.
Besides Bitcoin, obviously Bitcoin is the big one. Besides Bitcoin, what other coins do you think we should be taking a look at?
I think there's a bunch of different ones depending on segmentation. For example, you have let's say Solana. So Solana is a pretty powerful one. It's very fast. It has a centralization problem. But there's a lot of different criteria that, I think we have to look at, which is centralization or decentralization. What are they targeting? So Solana is designed to be much faster transaction speeds, but they have issues, right? I do own Ethereum. I own Solana. I actually like Cardano, believe it or not. If you look at the tokenomics of something like BNB, which is Binance's crypto, I'm a big fan of that one as well, just because of the way the tokens are burned and destroyed. So it's kind of like asking me, what's your favorite car? I could say, well, it's a Koenigsegg. Well, how about everyday driver? Well, that's not going to be the Koenigsegg. It's going to be something else. So each crypto has its own strengths and weaknesses. I like a lot of them, Marshall. I do. I like a lot of them.
So how does a person that has no experience whatsoever in crypto, how do they get started? What do they do? Where do they research? Who should they trust?
That's a great question. It was self-promotion to say you can trust me. There's a lot of people out there that are scammers and fraudsters, and that bothers me. They will say, for example, when I was getting started back in 2017, there was a great guy who was fantastic. His name was Ivan Ontek, Swedish kid, programmer, and he really broke down the fundamentals of how blockchain works. And I think that's an important step is understand what blockchain represents. How does it represent a significant increase over the systems that we have today? Obviously understand the pros, but with everything as a trader, I have a notepad I use all the time. Let me go to a blank page. It's partitioned on the side. Sorry, I got the green screen going here. It's not going to work, but partitioned down the middle. And when I make trades, I always write the positive things on the left side, the negative things on the right side. And you have to look at things from both perspectives at all times. So I think understanding how they're constructed, what are the consensus algorithms? Is it proof of work? Is it proof of stake? Is it a directed acyclic graph? How is it built? What's under the hood of this thing? And then what are they trying to achieve, right? What's the goal? A lot of people that I talk to are in what are called shit coins. That's looking at Pepe coin or Shiba Inu or Dog with Hat or Fart coin. These are useless coins that serve no purpose at all and will go to zero. And then you have things like Cardano, which are utilized around the world for a variety of different purposes. And same with Solana, Ethereum. You have Near Protocol, Canton Coin.
What is Cardano?
Cardano is, so the guys that started Ethereum back in 2014 was really when it blew up. There were like 5 different participants that were responsible. Vitalik Buterin, number 1. Charles Hoskinson was kind of the number 2 guy there. They had a disagreement. Hoskinson left and went and started Cardano, which is very similar. But like everything, when you have a technology that's nascent and brand new, it's not the best. You can look at pull up a picture of Carl Benz's patent for the first car in 1856. Hideous looking vehicle. But over time, we add to it, right? It had these little super thin bicycle tires going down a country road. Not going to work, right? So you had buffers, you had shocks, you had a windshield, you had ignition. All these pieces took well over 100 years to get that thing to a vehicle that we were really like, this is an amazing car. And now we have self-driving vehicles. So everything is an improvement on a previous edition. So Charles Hoskinson and Cardano took the flaws of Ethereum and said, let's fix those. Let's make it more transaction speed. Let's add better layer 2 functionality. And in doing so, they created a very nice blockchain. It just doesn't have adoption. Right now, you have so much competition in the space for crypto that you have 1,000 people doing the exact same thing. And usually it comes down to who has the most money and who has the biggest backers in that space to be the surviving one. Let me ask you a question. How many cryptocurrency projects do you think exist today? Let's take a random guess.
A couple thousand.
32 million cryptocurrencies. I've created 5 myself, just for fun to see how it's done, how it's created.
So are you the founder of Fartcoin?
I'd be really rich if I was. But no, I have a problem with stealing money from people. I have a moral compass and a code of ethics. I would never do something like that. So I've created them, but I'm not going to pump them on the public because my coins don't serve a purpose. It was just to see how I could make it. Maybe down the road, if I had a good business prospect, an idea, I might use tokenization as a means to get people to buy into it and have some value added. But otherwise, I wouldn't do it. And I ask people, if I were to tell you that something is 99.999% a fraud, I think the general consensus would be that it's all a fraud, right? Statistically, mathematically, it's all a fraud. Well, the reality is when you take 30 million and you times that by 0.0001, you have thousands of projects left that are legitimate, really trying to accomplish something. The challenging part for the average person is to filter through all the BS and find out what is actually a real project, not hype.
So top 3 coins that are real, not hype.
Ethereum, Bitcoin, number 1, because it's just of its network effect and adoption. Number 2 would be Ethereum. And that has, in my opinion, largely to do with the changes they made recently, which is really focusing on institutional adoption. The third one's tricky. I would say maybe Solana. There's one that I researched with my students recently called the Canton Network, which is very interesting, but I'm not quite sure if I want to go, a heavy investment in it. I bought a little bit of it just because it's interesting. I mean, it has investments from Citadel, Virtue Financial. These are 2 of the biggest financial firms in the United States. Goldman Sachs, Bank of New York Mellon is involved in these and bought into it. So some of these have pretty major backing. And what I think we'll ultimately see is networks that are controlled by a group of entities. For example, there's 3 types of blockchains. There is a public blockchain, which is like Bitcoin. Anyone can use it. There is a private blockchain, which is only one entity can use it. That'd be like the U.S. Stablecoin, right? If they issue one, CBDC. The third one's called a private or consortium blockchain, where you have it run by a small group of individuals. And I think that will probably be what happens with the banking system. Right now, JP Morgan has a blockchain. Most people have no idea. They're using what's the name of it? I forgot the name. It'll come to me in a minute. But they are using a combination of Ethereum and Avalanche technology and built their own proprietary blockchain. I think what will happen is you're going to have blockchains for the financial institutions, for logistics, and for other entities to represent a specific market segment. And the question for me is, how do I invest in that segment before it blows up, meaning everyone's using it? And I think Ethereum is probably number 1 in that space. I think Solana, because of its speed and efficiency, it'll probably be pretty good as well.
What's the average rate of return I should look to for a coin to have it make any sense to me? And can I even look at it that way relative, to stocks or real estate or anything else?
First off, we don't have that stated history that you do with something like the S&P 500. So if you look at the S&P 500 going back to the 1950s, you're looking about a 8 to 10% rate of return, historical average, right? With Bitcoin, I think you're still over 100% rate of return annually since inception, somewhere around there. Is that a realistic rate of return annually? In my opinion, absolutely not. To be consistently getting 100% rate of return is a very difficult thing to do in the investment world. So I don't think we should look at it from, what can I realistically expect? For me right now, it was a big learning lesson with what happened in the late 90s. So I was a high-speed day trader in the late 90s. I was averaging 550 trades per day. And I was so focused on making short-term trades, buying the bid, selling the ask, and just flipping the profits, that I didn't take a step back and follow my broader intuition, which was the internet's going to change the world. This whole world's going to change with the internet. I knew it. There was no doubt in my mind. But I didn't make investments. I was just actively trading. If I could go back and do it all over again, I would have taken, let's say a couple $1,000s, bought maybe 10, 15, 20 different companies and just parked them in an account and said, I'm leaving them alone no matter what happens to them. That's what I've done with crypto since 2000. Well, 2014 is my real start, but 2017 is where I got really active in it. And I've only sold a couple positions.
Where was Bitcoin in 2017?
Bitcoin in 2017 was right, I think about $1,000.
So you're rich.
Rich is subjective. It's a matter of perspective.
Well, you're rich compared to everybody else then. How's that?
I am financially stable and independent. We will say that. You know,
well,
it's funny at the beginning of the program. You're like,
you a sexy beast? Can I say that on this show?
Look,
so what are your thoughts? Do you believe we're going to reach a time where fiat currency is just eliminated?
Without a doubt. So it brings up a couple interesting questions. Number one is, if we go from fiat to a digital currency, what are the pros and cons of that type of system? So if we leave fiat, we earn money. And the reason for that is it costs over $1 billion just to make money. Just to print it, the manufacturing process, it costs over $1 billion a year. So we save $1 billion a year as a country in manufacturing. If I wanted to print the exact same amount of money in fiat versus digital, it costs me zero in digital. Type how much I want, hit a button, it's done. So that efficiency, crypto wins. The anonymity of fiat currency, the ability for me to go and buy whatever I want with this dollar. If I want to go buy some black tar heroin on the street, I can do that with this. If I do that with crypto or any illegal activities, depending on which crypto we use, it's 100% trackable. Now, I kind of align myself more with the libertarian view with regards to money, which is it's my money. I should be able to do whatever I want, whenever I want. You have no say in it because I earned it. It's mine. The government doesn't see it that way, right? And with fiat currency, you do have the ability to go do whatever you want. Regardless of what Elizabeth Warren has been saying, that Bitcoin is used by all drug dealers and terrorists, that's a bunch of crap. The dollar is used by more drug dealers and terrorists than any currency in the world. Extortionists, you name it, it's dollars. So if I'm going to track people and understand what their purchases are, crypto is great for the government. And they will probably issue a central bank digital currency. My guess is probably another 5 to 10 years. And it'll run in synchronicity with the fiat currency until they can phase it out. And we got rid of the penny. That's a smart move. We got rid of getting rid of the nickel next. Pretty soon it'll be paper money. The question comes, at that point, everyone, 100% of everybody must have a digital wallet, a way to carry their money. And then you start to, there's people that don't have money, that cannot afford to have a phone that might have my digital wallet on it. And maybe it's a government device that's issued. Maybe it's an implant. I don't know what the future holds, right? This is sci-fi stuff. But that, I think, is the biggest challenge, is how do we make sure that everyone has access to that financial system when some people can't afford an electronic device to hold digital money? But I think we're going there. It makes it 100% trackable. The government can see every single thing that you do. And I look at it even more from a cascading
more importantly, they can, even though people say the government can't seize your digital currency, I say hogwash. It's simply not true. But it comes back to what I was saying before. I believe it's guaranteed that we are going to all be on digital currency. And I think in a couple of years, I don't think it's going to be that long. Success begets success, technology begets technology. And I think that for that reason that you just said alone, we're going to a digital currency so that it can be controlled. And if we go to a digital national currency, then just like with the poker players, online poker playing didn't cease to happen. What happened was all of the big gaming companies, Bally's, MGM, they all said, no, we don't want these guys with poker sites out of Costa Rica infringing upon our business. So let's outlaw online gaming. Well, yeah, they outlawed it short term, but then they reinstated it long term once those lobbyists got it approved that only people with valid gaming license, like Caesars Entertainment, like MGM, that those people would be the ones that would have the online gaming, betmgm.com. I think the same thing is going to happen with digital currency. I think that the United States, first and foremost, is going to outlaw any other digital currency transactions inside the United States except for their currency. But back to the idea, do you think that transition, because I agree there's got to be a transition, do you think the transition is going to be putting us back on a currency with backing, gold, silver, precious metals, something, before it goes digital? Or do you think we'll never go back to any kind of a currency that has anything behind it?
You can't. You can't. How can you today? How can you back the US dollar with gold given our rate of spending? There's no way you could hold the value of that dollar and peg it to gold. We are reckless. I'm saying we because I'm a part of the United States, but as a government, as a country, we are reckless spenders. If this was any other person, they'd be bankrupt and they'd probably be in jail for fraud. But the government can do this, right? They are spending. Just go to usdebtclock.org and it'll blow your mind. I mean, when you look at the numbers and how much we owe per person, it's mind-boggling. You know, the only time that in my lifetime we had a budget surplus was under Bill Clinton. That means we had extra money. Right. Not today. And I don't see that changing. The only way I think that you could back the US dollar by a commodity, gold, silver, even Bitcoin, right, is if you knew that you had spending under wraps, because you need to be able to borrow money in copious amounts to pay down your debt. And that's the problem the US has. The bigger question, honestly, Marshall, is do we get to a point that the US defaults on its debt, right? And again, we can keep printing money. We can keep printing money. But at a certain point, China, Japan, Europe's going to look at us and go, hell, you guys can't pay back your debts. You're paying us back with worthless dollars that you just printed out of thin air. You know, we're going to go buy somebody else's bonds. And they've already started to do that. If they stop buying our bonds, the government has to offer higher yields to pay down its debt. That hurts the government more. So, you know, I don't think it's inconceivable to think that within the next 10 years, the U.S. government defaults on its debt.
Well, and it could be a default or it could not be. And I think you just raised a very interesting point. You know, Trump is a business person. He's a negotiator. That's his approach to politics. And I saw that slight roll of the eyes from the libertarian friend across from me. I see that. But here's my thought about this. Klugman, the economist Klugman, floated this a while back. What is the current debt? Like $32 trillion, somewhere in that range? Yeah. $33 trillion. So what he floated was the idea that the U.S. Treasury does not have legal standing to print its own currency, except for platinum coins. And what he floated, what he suggested was that the U.S. is allowed to print on their own, separate from the Federal Reserve, platinum coins. And the suggestion was at the time when it was $17 trillion in debt, was that the U.S. mints, in this day, $32 trillion platinum coins. So 32 coins with a $1 trillion value, take those back, hand them to the Federal Reserve and say, we're paid in full. We're not paying you any more money. We are paid in full. My opinion on that, you know, there's a lot of people that would say, oh my God, the economy would be in completely upheaval and everything would be destroyed and the world wouldn't trust us anymore. And I say, I call BS on that, because my opinion is this: those platinum coins would have an intrinsic value. The value of the platinum itself would have a value. And if we give 32 of those coins to the Federal Reserve, we're in effect giving the Federal Reserve way more value than the Federal Reserve ever gave the Treasury. So my own personal opinion is there's a real opportunity. You called it a default, and I get it because that's the way your brain operates. If I am dealing with a usury lender, if I'm dealing with a lender that gives me money that is giving me usury rates, which the Federal Reserve does, then if it's found that they are criminal, they can't loan me money at that interest rate, then that debt is null and void by law. So if there was a way to nullify the debt, you know, people argue that, the debt that $32 trillion in debt that's the U.S. debt, it's owed to China, it's owed to Russia, it's owed to other countries. That's baloney. It's not owed to anybody except for the Federal Reserve. That's the only debt holder for the United States. Except, China, as you said, buys U.S. bonds. Other countries buy U.S. bonds based on their confidence in the U.S. economy. And I don't think they buy based on the confidence in the U.S. dollar. It's based on the confidence in the U.S. consumer, meaning 30% of all of the buyers in the world are based here in the United States. The United States has the buyers. We got about 10 more minutes before the top of the hour where we start taking calls in. And if you're around, if you can be around for the next hour, I'd love to keep you on the air. Yeah, that'd be great. I promise you, we got some people that want to pick your very intelligent brain.
Pick
But
away,
before we
guys.
start
Pick
opening
away.
up the phone lines, and we have a special thing. I don't know if you knew this. Every single caller that calls in, they get 100 fiat dollars from me. I pay them $100 cash.
Sweet.
So 877 Silver One, that's the number to call. When you call in, you get on the air, you can ask me a question, you can ask Merlin a question, and every single person that gets in and calls in today, right now, call in now, get in before the queue. It's always full, so if you don't call in right now, you won't get on the air. But here's what I wanted to talk about. What are your thoughts on Gisara Nassara?
Nassara?
Gisara Nassara.
I'll claim ignorance.
Okay, then I'm gonna leave the topic alone because it doesn't really matter. But it's a complete remake of the entire financial systems in the world.
Oh.
Gisara Nassara, Gessara Nessara. You should check it out because I think you'll find it quite fascinating.
Okay.
Obviously, we're moving toward a time where we will have a more centralized type of currency. It's inevitable. I don't know if it's going to be a one world currency in our lifetimes, but certainly there's going to be a consolidation like the EU did with their currency. Not that it's good. I don't think it's good, but I do think that it's almost certain to happen. They obviously floated for a while a North American currency, Canada, Mexico, United States.
Well, that was a hypothesis. The Amero, that was more speculation. That was like, well, let's see the idea, and that wasn't well received.
Well, of course not. Why would the richest country want to dilute their currency with a third world country and a country that is at any given point in time 30% less in value than the U.S. dollar? So it was silly, but that's the same thing that happened obviously with the euro. Is there were many countries that got in on the euro that were lesser countries that got a great advantage, but the countries, England and some of the other more dominant countries, their currency took a massive hit and continued to take a hit. So my question to you is, do you believe that as the world shrinks via technology, which we do every single moment, do you believe that we're going to end up in a place where all currency is a universal currency, a one coin?
Nope, not at all. No way.
What's your reason you don't think that's going to happen?
I think it's an impossibility. So when I was working, I lived over in Italy for a long time, and I was there right as they transitioned to the euro. And I was interviewed by a Spanish news station. They said, "What are your thoughts on the euro?" And I said, "As a consumer or as a citizen?" They said, "Let's start as a consumer." I said, "Awesome. I'm like James Bond as it is. I literally had an accordion file with my euros and all the different currency, not euros, but the lira and the francs. I had all that. And it was a pain in the butt to go border to border with all this stuff. So one currency, amazing for Europe. As a citizen, terrible. If you look at German people in general, work. They're very strong. They're very work. They're very on time. They're very disciplined. You've got Italians. It's like, I worked in Italy. No offense to the Italian people. I love Italian people. You have a different perspective of life. When I would get to the office, I'd roll in 9 o'clock in the morning, 9:02. Marco would roll over. Hey, facciamo una sigaretta, facciamo pausa, hey. And they would just go outside and smoke cigarettes and take a break and talk about life till 9:45. Come back in, work for an hour, and then take another coffee break. I mean, they're relaxed. Then you go to Greece, work. Who wants to work? I'm going to go to the beach and enjoy life. Cultural differences, you're not going to bridge that gap with the currency. The problem with the euro is if Greece goes through major economic turmoil and they want to do what the United States does, which is manipulate the currency, devalue it, or increase the supply to benefit their economy one way or another, they can't do that because it impacts everybody else. So to have a one world coin, absolutely not. I think that if you looked at the United States saying we're going to give up the dollar and go to something universal, that'd be World War III material, because the power of the US dollar is what gives our government the ability to control our people, in my opinion, right? You could say the military does that, but I think there's no way on earth that they're going to get rid of the dollar. Now, do I think that we get a global currency that is on top of that system? I think that's a very real possibility. And that's one reason I am a fan of Bitcoin, because I think that as more and more adoption grows, you'll have a secondary monetary system that is global, right? And I think Bitcoin could be potentially a global currency, even though it moves a little bit slow, but it might be a digital currency like Ethereum or something like that, where everyone is included. There are no barriers to entry. No one can tell you what to do with your money or without it. To me, that is more plausible. Is you do have the fiat currencies of each government, but a secondary network that goes in parallel with it. And the governments are going to embrace it because you can either fight it or you lose. You can embrace it or fight it. And if you fight it, you'll push people out of your country. You'll push money out of your country. And I do respect what Trump has done, says we want America to be the leader in this. Well, if that's the case, then we have put our stamp on embrace it. Good for us. So, yeah.
So I'm just going to go on record and quote you as saying, I respect what Trump has done. I'm going to leave it at that.
With crypto. Hold on. With crypto.
It's my show. I'll say what I want to say.
There you go. You do.
Obviously we've been talking about cryptocurrency versus cash right now. Before we get to our callers, can you talk about what you see as an overview on investments in general right now? Obviously, crypto is just a small portion of your investment portfolio. You invest in a whole lot of things. What are you bullish on right now? And what are you bearish on?
I would say broadly I'm bearish on the overall equity markets, but slightly bearish just because it's gone up for so long. I mean, I can show you charts here, but you've had this picture here. I think I may have it shared if you want to switch it over, Gary. So, this is your S&P 500. And before I explain why I think it's looking weak, let me just go back to something here so your viewers at home can relate to. If you look at these two big bumps right here, we'll call them the double. This is the dollar.
What are we looking at, Merlin? What is this?
This is the S&P 500.
Okay.
So this is your broad market. And you look at this peak right here. I'm going to draw a line. This is 1998 2000 to 2003. The market fell 51%. And this is written about in all textbooks today is the dot-com bubble, right? Everyone knows it. No matter how old you are, that's the dot-com bubble. You go to the next one over here. This was the financial crisis, which is, a black eye in the entire industry. You have, it was a 57% decline in 72 weeks, right? So a huge decline over a couple of years. And you look at those are written about in textbooks today, and people just want to learn from the dot-com bubble and the financial crisis. If I zoom out here and show us where we're at today, those monumental declines in markets are almost insignificant. They look like small little pimples, whereas before they were like Mount Everest. You look at where we are today. This is a result of what you've been talking about, Marshall. This is a result of printing money, pumping into the system, and continually creating a systemic bubble where people put in their money into their 401ks every month automatically and go on and go on and on. At some point, we're going to have a big correction here. We have obviously the 2021, which is COVID. You have this one back here in mid 2025, which was great. But I think at some point you're going to be looking at a 50% drawdown in the equity markets. And I think we're a couple years away from that. I think we've got probably 3 or 4 years away, and I can explain why in just a second. But, when you have big moves like this, I do expect a pullback. And I'm actually short the S&P right now. Long-term, specific companies, I am very bullish on Tesla, even though I'm getting slaughtered today on Tesla. I think that if they're the first company out there with the robots, Optimus, and they can roll that out from a production perspective, they're going to absolutely dominate. Because I'll tell you what, Marshall, I'm going to be first in line to get one. First in line.
And
if that robot will cook me breakfast, do my laundry, mow my lawn, wipe my baseboards, walk my dog, man, I have so much more free time in my life. I might get 2 of them, depending how efficient they are.
Well, you're leaving out all the West world benefits too.
There's that. You know what? By the time that gets all evil and my robot starts sabotaging me, I'll be dead. So it's fine. I'll leave that to the next generation. But I think we're
actually, I was acknowledging the West world benefits, but at any rate,
I guess. But
thank you.
Yes, I got that.
So we were just in Vegas for our anniversary, and my family saw for the first time the autonomous vehicles, all the Zooks running around Vegas.
Yep.
And I said to them when I saw it, I said, that's the first thing. I think that's going to happen before we start seeing robots in the house.
Totally.
We're going to start seeing the majority of the traffic on the street is autonomous vehicles because it's just immediately practical. And I think a lot less threatening to people than, having something in their home in that privacy place.
Yep. And then if you look at that from a long-term perspective, let's say Tesla does roll out its robotaxi and its cyber bus or whatever they're calling that thing. At what point does that start to impact traditional vehicle sales? Because I'm definitely in the camp of, if I'm a truck guy, I love my Toyota truck. I'm a 4x4 guy. I like utility, but I also like not driving. I live in, California. We have some of the worst drivers in the world. They all think that they are, the top driver, Max Verstappen, and they're garbage drivers. I don't like the stress of driving. So if I could just hit a button and get in my car and it takes me everywhere I want to go efficiently, effectively, without any problems, safer than my normal car, sign me up. I'll have my
Yeah.
regular vehicle when I want to go and just enjoy and burn rubber or something like that. But, I'm all on board EVs. And I think that they're going to, not EVs necessarily, but just self-driving vehicles. I think there's going to be more. The reality is we don't have the infrastructure right now to support 100% of it. We need more electricity. And that begs a bigger question when you look at AI demand and the energy consumption for AI and crypto for that matter. We need more infrastructure. China is running circles around us with regards to power generation. And that probably, in my opinion, will be one of the big Achilles heels for America over the next few years is energy demand, right? We're hurting ourselves there.
With that in mind, what energy companies should we be looking at?
I honestly am not a specific energy consumer with regards to identifying all the different businesses. So if in that case, I would buy ETFs. I'd buy an exchange traded fund that has a basket of different energy companies. There's many different energy ETFs out there. That'd be more my approach. I am more of a short-term trader. So looking at price charts and going off of moves that might last me a couple of days, a couple of weeks. But if it's really long-term, I would buy an ETF simply because I don't know. I have a finance degree. I still won't look at a company's fundamentals. I think it's all lies and BS and manipulated accounting to go into financial statements. So I would much rather just have a portfolio built where I say, take me the top players in individual sectors, whether it's healthcare or technology, whatever market segment you believe is going to be good, buy that ETF, and therefore just remove a lot of the extra effort of research that I would be doing. Not that I'm lazy, Marshall. Not that I'm lazy.
I understand. I get it. We got a caller calling in. We can put him on the air. He might have more of a question than just the question that he let the screeners know. Also, he may just want $100, which I wouldn't blame him because that's a pretty good
rate of
return
return's good.
That's a really good return on investment. David Davila, welcome to the show, and I see that you have a question for Merlin. What's your question?
Hey, how you doing?
We're awesome.
All right, so my question is, since I do a lot of day trading, so I was really intrigued by this topic. But my question was, is it always better to keep cash, like liquid cash for emergencies, or is it better to keep more money into digital stuff like Bitcoin, Roth IRAs, or because a lot of what I'm doing is I'm putting a lot more money into these digital things, but I'm not really keeping a lot of cash anymore. So is that safe to do that going forward?
Safe is a difficult question because if you're in crypto, it's not safe, right?
Oh,
that.
Yeah, no.
It's one of the most volatile asset classes out there, as we've witnessed over the past couple of weeks. So I would argue that if you are a day trader, it's better to have more capital on hand to create buying opportunities when they arise as a short-term investor. However, statistics by Bear Stearns, when I was getting started as a day trader, show that 93% of traders fail as a day trader, right? So I always encourage people starting out to don't be a day trader because it's just too risky. You have way more things to deal with. Although you're younger, how old are you?
19.
Oh,
Yeah.
why couldn't I have got started at 19? You were in a blessed
jealous.
spot. Yeah. Your reaction time, your speed, you can react like this. Most people that want to get into day trading are like in their 30s and 40s. Their reaction time's slower. They don't have discipline.
Discipline is a lot.
It's huge. It's number one, risk management. I mean, everybody wants to get into trading to make money, which of course is the goal. But if you don't focus on your downside risk, you're going to lose all your money, period. I mean, I've seen it happen countless times. So if I was to, be an advisor, if you will, and say, hey, here's how to get started, I would do more swing trades. Days last a couple of days to a couple of weeks till you really get comfortable with execution, understanding stop losses, all the order routing tools, and your platform. And then I would save a little bit to day trade with. I think day trading is a better system because you remove overnight risk, gap up risk, gap down risk. But I really am a fan of just buying an ETF or something or shorting an ETF and playing it for a couple of days to get really a feel for the market. I'm guessing at 19, you've only been doing this a little bit, right?
Yeah, I started learning like around 14, and I've lost, who knows, I lost like a lot of money because of the discipline, but I'm at an age now where I've been trading for so many years that I've learned the discipline, and I'm actually profitable now. So it's kind of like an accomplishment.
Absolutely, David. It really is. And it's like, it's a growth step. You are, I don't want to sound like I'm buttering you up here, but in your position at 19, having traded for long enough to understand the discipline and risk management side of it, you are in an elite group, especially of your peer group. I mean, your peer group's not even going to think about money until they're in their mid 30s and maybe late 20s, and you're already miles in front of them. So congratulations to you.
Yeah.
As far as the original question about kind of how we spread things apart here, I would keep, since you have such a long time horizon, if you're going to put money in crypto, I would put it there and just don't even look at it. Right. I would consistently add to it, like, let's say $100 a month or whatever, take the money from this phone call and buy $100 worth of Bitcoin or something. But then I would focus some swing trading, and I'd have 3 focuses. The long-term crypto, I got my swing trading account where I would keep a bulk of my capital, and then I'd have some in short term because, again, statistics show most people lose money as day traders. I mean, I was on a floor with 180 day traders, and out of that floor, there might have been 10 that were actually making money. And what happens is, and you probably experienced this, out of 180 people, I'd have people like, yeah, I'm crushing it, I'm killing it. And I would go in the back office and look at their trade statements. And yeah, they had one good trade for the day, but for the week they had 15 bad ones and were negative, 10 grand. So
sounds like Las Vegas.
It sounds like
yeah.
It sounds like social media for crypto and trading, because you go onto YouTube and you get all these idiots who are like, I'm making so much money. Look, I got a rate of return of 6,000%. You know how they do it? They create 100 different accounts with $100 or $1,000 each, and they do YOLO trades. They'll go buy some crazy penny stock, and they'll only show you the one that made them 1,000% rate of return in a week, yet they lost on 99% of all the other accounts. It's cherry picking. It's garbage. This industry is full of fraud, man. You got to be real careful. But you know that. I mean, you've been trading for a while, so you understand the reality.
That's the thing with this thing, and that I feel like anyone in this call as well, if you don't know anything about getting into this, is that there's so many frauds. Like, the first person, they'll email you saying, I can make you $10,000, and they will lose $10,000 of your money. And they don't know.
David, I have a question for you. You just got $100 just for calling into my show. Now that you have $100, what would you do with $100? How would you day trade and multiply $100, and what expectation would you have of an outcome? What kind of a return do you think you would end up getting?
So let me tell you exactly how it's been that $100. So what I would do with that $100 is I would actually do Forex, because I've learned into Forex. I understand Forex a little bit better than futures, but I would open up a $100 account doing futures, trading NASDAQ. So I'll put that $100 there. And what I would do is I would take the same trades that I'm taking in my other futures account, which is a funded account, because that's how you make money nowadays with trading futures, funded accounts. And I would take those same trades, but at a much smaller scale. So I'm only making $10 to $15 a day from that, which is not a lot. But when that adds up, it adds up. And actually, Marshall, the first $100 that you gave me back in Vegas and one of your shows, I did the same thing. And I was able to make a couple $100 off that $100 that you gave me.
Nice.
Bravo. And you said, I only make $10 or $15. That's 10 or 15%. So on a daily basis, that's a huge return. So what would you say, David, while I've got Merlin here, what would you say to other young people? Because you're way ahead of the curve, starting at 14 years old and having any kind of an interest even at 14 years old. That's major. But what do your friends say, first and foremost, about you trading? And then what would you say to any young people that might be watching the show right now to encourage them to start with $100? Call in, get the $100 from me. And then also you brought up something that I'm not sure everybody understands what the term means. You said funded trades. Are you trading through a particular instructor? Do you have a group that you work with that have taught you and that they fund your trades?
So just to answer that real quick, and I'll go back to the other one. The funded trading basically means, so you have a prop firm that you basically buy a challenge. So for me, I have one of my accounts are a $25,000 account. So what it is you need to make a profit goal. So for the 25,000, you have to make, let's say, $1,500. Once you make $1,500, you pass the challenge. Trading. Yeah. For me, I do futures, so I trade NQ. But you can do paper trading, whatever you like. And after that, once you pass that, they give you a live account. And once you have a live account, you can make money, and make money. It's good because you have that capital, that $25,000, and you can get funded.
Just to be clear, they're giving you money. They're giving you parameters that you can trade in, so you don't just blow through the money and lose all their money. But a funded trading account, they're giving you the money to trade. They're sharing the profits with you, but it's not your money at risk. And as long as you stay within the parameters, they'll keep funding your account. Is that a good description?
Yep. That's exactly. All
right. Part two of the question was, what do your friends think of you as a 19-year-old trader? And what would you say to other young people that are 14 like you started that might be interested in this, but they don't know where to start and they don't know what to do, what should they be doing?
So for the first part, from what my friends think that they see the profits and they say, get me into it, get me into it. And I tell them, I can help you learn, but it's not easy. It is not easy to learn this stuff. You'll lose all your money. You'll want to kill yourself. That's how crazy this stuff
I go
gets.
there.
I know you can lose your whole life in 5 minutes. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But to any
Yeah,
19-year-old,
just for the record, anybody watching my show right now, there's nothing worth losing your life over. Money is just math. It comes and it goes. And I just want to be very, very clear on that because I don't know about anybody else. I've had some pretty severe financial dips in my life, and it will mess with a person's mind. But ultimately, this doesn't matter, just to be clear.
Great.
of course, yeah, and for any 19-year-olds, for anybody young who wants to get into this stuff, I know I always hear after this, I always people, how do I get into it? It's just you just have to get into it. You just have to go on Google, go to ChatGPT, search up what is trading, what is Bitcoin, what is Nasdaq, and just go from there. Just learn the charts, learn how to look at charts. After that, learn how to put money into an account. After that, look at YouTube how to trade. And after that, little by little, you start, hey, I know how to do this. I know how to do this. Let me try this for real now. That's how I did it.
Well, let me fast track that for you and your friends. You could either do that or you could just go right to @TraderMerlin and get all the education you need in multiple disciplines of trading and investing in that process. So you're in Texas right now?
Yeah, Houston. And I actually saw Merlin at a Surge event that I went to.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, Merlin's awesome. He's at all the Surge events. He's at
Is your mom
all
Christine?
of the.
You said what?
Is your mom Christine?
No.
I'm trying to
I
remember.
was just a bystander.
Okay.
Well, good job. Hey, David,
yeah.
you just made $100 cash for calling in. Did somebody refer you to the show, or did you find me on your own?
No, pretty much the only guy was just Nam, which Nam do.
Yeah, of course. Nam's awesome. Well, you just made $100. If you refer somebody to the show, they'll make $100 when they call in, and you'll make $20 too. Which, in due respect, the cash that I give away is the best return that you can get anywhere today. So thanks so much for calling in.
Yeah.
Take care, brother.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, guys. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
So,
Man.
Again, I know
19.
you train a lot of people. And one of the experiences that I have, it doesn't matter whether it's real estate or the stock market or becoming a professional speaker or affiliate marketing, doesn't matter what it is. My experience has been you can fill a person up with every bit of knowledge and education available to them. And my experience is it's still the hardest thing is to get them to actually do anything. What do you do to get investors? I know you've taught people. You've been teaching people for, gosh, how long now? At least
1998.
Right. So almost 3 decades. So after teaching people to 3 decades, is there something that you do or some structure that you utilize or, some spanking you give somebody that gets them to finally take their knowledge and say, yes, today's the day I'm going to jump in the market. Today's the day I'm going to invest my $100. What do you do for those people that they're smart, they're motivated, they just can't get going?
I think much like what you do, you have to address people's fears and concerns, right? Because people go into a situation where there's public speaking or jumping out of an airplane, and you explain all the variables, you explain the risks and things that have them, cautious and nervous, and then you come up with a program, a step by step. Like, here's your first step, right? When you want to, go swimming, just put your feet in the water, and we'll start there. You comfortable with that? Okay, now let's put it all the way to your knees, and I don't. This is going to come across as bad, I think, but a lot of people believe that you should start off as paper trading. I don't think you should paper trade. Nowadays, with what the financial markets have done, they give you free trades for stocks. So you go find some cheap stock, find something that's like a $10, $15 stock and buy one share, right? You have $15 on the line, and okay, now I'll practice my stop losses. I'll look for supply and demand zones. I'll look for institutional footprints that might drive price. There's a lot of different strategies out there. I know some people using AI systems, which I don't think really work personally, but you just got to get them started and show them it's not that bad. Start off with a very small account size, start off with one share, and don't progress until you start to show results with one share. Are you going to get rich trading one share? Not a chance. There's just no way it's going to happen. But you'll get rich mentally and understand that okay, now I figured out how this thing moves. I can see the nuances of this particular stock or how the S&P moves and times of the day. Then you start to build on top of that. But When I started back in 1998, really as an active trader, I was told trade small share size, don't trade the most volatile stocks, don't trade the opening of the market. And my very first trade was at 6:30 on the dot California time, 1,000 shares of the most volatile stock of the day, which is Netscape. I mean, I violated the primary 3 rules my coach was telling me. So, there's this innate urge on the part of everybody to make as much money as humanly possible, as fast as humanly possible. And that's usually what ends up causing people to lose everything. So yeah, I would say you take it slow, start a process that fits you and your goals and objectives, and then you progress from there. Baby steps.
You mentioned something. I get pounded daily on my social media feeds by automated trading services, AI trading services. It makes sense to me. When I'm looking at the ads and I'm doing my research, it makes sense. It's kind of like playing basic strategy in blackjack. If the computer's already played 10 billion hands of blackjack, it knows what my best possible strategy, mathematically at least, is in any given circumstance. It doesn't take into account, obviously the card count or the rich or poorness of the deck in the moment. But, basic strategy, if a person only played basic strategy, they would be ahead of most other blackjack players who are playing on intuition. Give me your thoughts, and it's the last question I'm going to ask you before we wrap up today's show. Give me your thoughts on the pros and cons on those automated systems. You already said you're not really fond of them, so you can tell me why that is. But it seems to me like they should work. I mean, they should work better than any human trader because they certainly are processing more data in that given amount of time. What are your thoughts?
In your analogy of blackjack, I'm not really playing against the other players unless someone takes a card that, and plays stupidly. But if they're all playing by the rules, then I think the probability is actually in your favor if you're falling because you're playing against the house and you're playing against that deck. There's only a certain number of outcomes, right? The probability factor with most gambling in the casinos is it's very predictable. I've got 52 cards. I know how many are out. I know what I've got. Okay, now what's the probability of X card popping up at this moment in time? We can calculate that fairly clearly. With trading, it's no longer a 52 card deck. It's an infinite deck. And every variable is infinitely different. Like one day might be incredibly bullish with great news, and then Trump tweets out something about China and tariffs at 2,000%, and markets decline 30% that day. Those types of things, I think, make AI irrelevant. And I know that people are like, oh, AI systems are it. They can break down more information. I think that the human actually does better in their ability to adjust to market situations. I'll never use AI. I've bought trading systems before. So, doesn't it sound great to spend $10,000 on a system that shows they have a track record of rates of return of 20% per month? I'll give it a shot. I've done it twice. And each of those accounts with a proven track record on futures trading accounts, 2 of them, have lost all their money. And actually one of them, they sent me a thing saying I owed them money because I lost more than my investment. So I said, go F yourself. And,
good luck.
Go away.
Good luck with that
one. I don't buy these systems. I think that, again, it's predatory on people who are lazy that don't want to do the work. I'm proud of what I've accomplished because it doesn't matter to me what the markets throw at me. In the long run, I'll do fine. Like today's a bad day for me. I'm having a pretty, financially it's a rough day, but it's just one data point. My trading career is not made up of one data point. It's millions of data points, right? So over the long haul, today will just get swept under the rug and wrapped up into the overall results for the year, which will most likely be good. You never know. Sometimes I'll have a bad streak, but I think I have a better probability of success managing my emotions and all of the data that's coming through for my style, which again, I'm kind of a shorter term. Like I love trades that last about a week. And again, there's a myriad of different strategies out there that people can use. I think the key is if you see someone online who's making robust claims about how much money they're making, you should run away right away. I learned that early on the trading floor that I was on. Most of the people that bragged about how much money they were making, when I went behind the scenes and looked at their actual trading statements, they were losing money. And there were 2 people on the floor. I won't mention their names. We called one of them Big Red. Hopefully he doesn't listen to the show. But Big Red used to be the quietest guy on the floor. He sat 2 seats down from me. And he would trade one stock at a time. Cisco was his thing. He traded all day long. Not even all day, but just for a couple hours a day. And he would pull out about $1,000 a day, like clockwork. And he never said a word about it. You just see him get up from his computer, walk away. So he lived in the same apartment complex as me. So I'd, see him at the pool and talk about what's going on and kind of picked his brain a little bit. And I knew that every day this guy'd make at least $1,000. So, learned his strategy. He's like, well, why should I talk about it? Because I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. My goal is to, make $1,000 a day. I'm done. I have other people who drive around in, way too flashy cars and they're leveraged to the hilt and broke. So I think that society has a way of making us believe that if you have all that flashy stuff, that you are the number one king of something. And I just don't think that's the way it is. Be humble in what you do, and try to get yours. Do what you can to put yourself in a better financial position. Learn the rules about something, but be humble in the process is my philosophy.
If people want to learn with you and they want to come directly to you, obviously they can find you on Instagram at tradermerlin.com. Or at Trader Merlin, rather.
I don't teach individually. So I don't teach classes. I work for a company called Trading Academy and other companies where I teach there for those companies. For me, my show is just me talking about financial markets, and it's not really designed to be me teaching you like hands-on. It's more like high level, what's going on in the markets today. That's just at Trader Merlin on YouTube or Trader Merlin on Twitter. I don't use Instagram. I'm a social media idiot. I don't really use it much. So unfortunately, I don't use all these social media. Maybe I'll get a social media manager someday. But yeah, Trader Merlin at on YouTube or on Twitter is where they can reach me.
Well, you're awesome. Thanks so much for being on the show. You are just always a joy to talk to. Thanks. Obviously, you've been doing this for a very long time. You're extremely wise. I appreciate it. And again, you've been fun to have on. You're welcome back anytime you'd like to. Thanks so much for sharing your wisdom with my audience.
Thank you, Marshall. Thanks to you and your team. And anytime you want me back, let me know.
God bless, brother. Take care. We're great fun. Hey, we've got great guests on the Marshall Silver Live Show every single day. Tomorrow, we have a show scheduled, but while I have been sitting here, I've got an idea for a surprise show, and I think I'm going to be able to get it on. I'll give you details on my social media a little bit later today if we make a change in the schedule. At the same time, thanks so much for being a part of the show. Every single day we're here starting at 10 a.m. Until, frankly, I'm done. Usually a couple of hours as it was today. And every single person, just like David that called in, receives $100 every single time they call in. How can I do that? I'd rather give you my money than Mark Zuckerberg. It's that simple. Without spending it in advertising, just giving it to the people that call in. I'm going right to the source. You tell all your friends about the show, and we all have a whole lot of fun. I'm Marshall Silver. You are totally loved. Until we see each other tomorrow, remember, we're in this thing called life together. Celebrate life. God bless, and I'll see you then.